Welcome back to another episode of Spectator Mode. I'm Neil Strebig. With me, as always, is Donald Double D DeCray. Rolling your eyes, unbelievable. Best intro in the biz right there.
So you say, so you say. I mean, it
Now we
always
got
gives me energy.
we got got some good news from Capcom and Activision Blizzard, which is a rarity on this show. And then talk a little bit about Attack on Titan, a little Star Trek news as well, thrown in there for the Trekkies out there. Which actually, fun fact, it's actually Star Trek Day here in Memphis.
Is
Yeah,
it really?
fun fact. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
One of the city council members, he made a whole thing. Yeah, wore a whole Trekkie outfit and all, like a couple
did not
years
know
back, like
that. That is a
2015, I
fun
think. Yeah,
fact.
yeah. And then we're going to talk about the Warner Brothers Flash and the actor yet to be named, because I know I'm going to mess up saying it. So Ezra Urza.
You had it right the first time. You really did. You had it on the very
So
first time. I'm so proud.
now we'll talk a little bit about Ezra Miller and the Flash debacle with Warner
Twice
Brothers,
correct.
and then a little bit of Moon Knight news, some Tomb Raider news, and we're actually close out the same topic, some new Morbius news as well. We won't
Yeah.
go as long as we did last week, though, folks.
Yes, I agree with that. We will try to make this a little bit snappier, I think, overall. So fingers crossed. Why don't you get us started?
So yeah, well, Capcom, awesome news. Basically announced that they're raising salaries across the board by a third, 30%. Well, a little bit less than a third, 30%. So pretty amazing news there. We haven't really seen that any developers kind of make that jump or increase. And then you found just before we actually started recording some news Activision Blizzard, who we've definitely pummeled on the show.
Oh yeah, we've given Blizzard a lot of shit for their business practices, for their inclusivity, for their work environment, but they've just announced that they are going to be bringing on 1,100 of their QA testers full time. So they're moving from contract positions to full time positions. They're all getting bumped up to at least $20 an hour, which is phenomenal because, frankly, I think QA is one of those probably undervalued departments. From a business standpoint, I think players understand the value of good QA. I don't know that necessarily businesses do. So happy to see Blizzard investing, happy to see Capcom investing in their companies. Curious though, why do you think they're doing it?
I mean, Activision Blizzard, I think there's a lot of heat there in general. So it's again kind of do something right. I mean, the floor for the quality assurance guys is 20 an hour, which is, kind of status quo in the grand scheme of things, but still it's a sign, a step in the right direction. Only 1,100 employees. So it's grand total how many folks they do employ. It's not like a massive amount, but still not being on contract, I think is the biggest thing, especially in the video game industry. Capcom, maybe they're seeing what's going on. It's like, hey, we need to act and, we have the funds and why not? But I mean, it wasn't like Capcom had any negative news on them. Resident Evil's been a hit franchise for a while. And 30% like doesn't matter really what you make. That's a huge increase for anybody, any
Oh yeah,
industry.
for sure.
So I mean that's significant. That's definitely not just hey, here's 5-10%. I mean, that's this is a livable wage increase right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because $20, remember Activision Blizzard is headquartered in California, and I think cost of living out there, better than most. Cost of living out
Mhm.
there is insane. I don't know that $20 an hour
Yeah.
goes as far
$6
as
Cheerios.
seriously?
Yeah, I'm not even
Jesus
playing. Yeah.
Christ. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure $20 an hour goes as far as people might expect, and maybe this is a little bit of a PR move because it's an easy win, right? Like you're right, 1,100 employees, even at those rates, it's not that much money for the company. But you know what? I'm still gonna give them their kudos for it because I think investing in quality assurance and good testing of games before release is crucial because a lot of games we've seen come out recently have flopped on release or had major issues that I think hurt overall sales. Long-term perception of the game was negative because of those initial bugs in the release and stuff like that. So, like I said, from a player standpoint, I think we understand that good quality assurance testing leads to good releases and good games. So, not going to knock that, but I do think there's probably a motivation there of the easy win, whereas Capcom just seems to be doing like, hey, we've got money, let's do right by our employees and let's share the wealth. So I give them a lot more kudos for what they're doing. So definitely happy to see it on both accounts.
But no, on from good news, I would say on to I think it's bad news. I don't know how you're gonna react to this.
Mm,
Attack on Titan, which we had an episode going to the final season
hmm
not too long ago, maybe about a month and a half ago. we're going to have to do another episode now because Attack on Titan announced that this isn't the final part of the final season. It's going to be a third part because why the hell not, right? It's not like they just butchered half of the season anyway, but hey, it is what it is. I'm going to leave you on the Star Trek news that we're going to group into that. But I mean, first and foremost, what's your reaction? I know you haven't finished
right. So
part 2 final
to give
season,
people perspective, I'm on episode 8 right now of the season. I started watching 2 days ago or whatever. So I've been binging. I think I've been going pretty hard on it.
I mean, it goes quick. I mean, 20-minute episodes. Basically.
It's my preferred way of watching things is the binge mode. So I'll sit down and I'll watch like an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time in chunks like that. And the pacing of the final season does not live up to the pacing, certainly not of the first and second. Yeah, the first season, I think in particular, and like the Attack on the Wall and everything else. The energy is just a lot lower. Like I really didn't get like goosebumps until the 6th episode where the rumbling happens. That was awesome. Like the 5th or 6th, and then it just kind of like again goes slow on the development.
I have so much to talk about that. Like, yeah, we need a whole episode separate to this.
We absolutely can.
Because like, I just think from a fan perspective, without dissecting the show, it's fucking stupid. You're waiting a whole nother year, 2023, and it's just like we talk about milking titles and IPs. Like, this is ridiculous. You advertised it as part 2. Expected, everyone kind of saw the pacing like, oh my god, this has a lot to still wrap up, sure. And then to do this is just, it's bush league. It's absolutely bush
league. And I was in for the breakneck pace, right? Like I was looking forward to, like on the one hand, it was a lot to get through to bring this all to a full close. On the other hand, I will admit I was looking forward to this kind of like whirlwind action story, like drawing to this big dramatic close, like just high energy the whole way through, basically. Especially the way I watch it, because I do binge, you know what I mean? Like I keep that energy through the entire thing. And I know a show's good when I don't stop watching, right? Like I'll put on a show and I will literally just stay up all night to finish it if I'm really hooked. And I'm not, right? Like I'm watching this in like 1 hour chunks, 2 hour chunks or whatever. Not even 2 hours. I think it's like a 1 hour. I'll do like 3 episodes in a sitting, maybe 4, then come back to it. And if I'm able to just get up and walk away, at least for me, that means I'm not hooked. And I think it failed to live up to my expectations. And you're right. I don't see a reason for it besides milking it, because I don't feel like, from what I've seen so far, there was so much story and exposition in this season that they had to take this long on it.
It takes me out of it because it's like, okay, you know, do I really want to sit through another just 20-minute basically sprint of episodes? Because that's the thing too, like with these two halves of the final season, why on earth they didn't have even a 45-minute episode in anything in either part is beyond me. And now you're going to have a second.
Well, now you know why. You know what I mean? Now you know why, because they needed all that material for the next season.
It's just absurd. And it's just like, you could have did it and like, you're dragging it out. And it's just, it doesn't make me excited to wait till 20. I was excited. Granted, you know, you watched episodes of Attack on Titan. I was pissed off about how things went in the first half, but I was excited coming into part 2. Mm-hmm. I'm now kind of just at the point to where like, I really don't give a shit.
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah. When it comes back to some of the issues we talked about, I think with other franchises and stuff, of the pacing, the delays in releases, like it really does kill energy and excitement for the franchise. And in this case, I think everyone was coming in expecting to be done. This is part 2 of the final season, quote unquote final season, which is going, the part 2 is going to have a part 2 or a part 3, I guess they're calling it, whatever. Yeah. I mean,
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a fan.
Again, I want to dive into it more. And once you finish it, because there's a lot of parts though that
we can definitely have a conversation about, and I'm sure we will.
I mean, a lot of parts that just had me kind of like, what the fuck? Yeah. And I think deserve a much deeper conversation, especially because I think this decision, on top of how this past season went, I think it polarized the fan base more so than kind of what we talked about on the Attack on Titan final season.
You're getting a little spicy for me, so why don't we save that for a later date? Instead, I want to kind of pivot here to another bit of sad news. Maybe is Star Trek Picard has announced, it's been announced that they are doing a 3rd and final season. The 3rd season will be their last season. And for those who may not know, Picard as a character has been, I think he's honestly like the 2nd most known character probably of the franchise, right?
Absolutely.
Kirk, Spock, Picard, so. Right there. I would say he's right up there, right?
Yeah. Sir Patrick Stewart. I mean,
And Patrick
I think it's
Stewart,
a generational thing. I think that's
I
how a
know.
lot of people got introduced to Star Trek. Then
I
was
would
if you
agree.
watch,
Star Trek Next Generation, I think, is what really brought in a lot of people to the franchise. And I think Patrick Stewart, for his part, still looks good and is an amazing actor. You know what I mean? But the show for its entire run, I think, was bogged down by this sort of like seriousness that I don't know that original Star Trek had. This was kind of like this, like we go to a planet, we have an adventure, you know, we're be bopping around in space and having fun. Like, have you seen the show? What is it by creator of American Dad? The
the like Star Trek kind of spoof.
Yeah, it's a spoof, but I think it carries a lot more. Seth MacFarlane
Seth MacFarlane, you told me. Yeah.
created.
I know what you're talking about. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen Picard though. I don't have Paramount Plus, and
Ooh,
I'm actually not a huge Trekkie. I know it's gonna like makes people mad, but
the
I
Orville.
respect it. I'm not a. I one of those things. You know what I mean? I enjoy it. I just never die hard, dove into it, and watched it religiously. But I do like what they do with Picard. I do think, at least unlike AOT, they're doing a proper send off, at least,
I mean, I'm glad they're bringing.
or what sounds like it.
It
At least.
sounds right. Like the announcement also includes they're bringing back most, if not all, of the main cast: LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, Jonathan Frakes, Gates McFadden, Brent Spiner, Marina Sirtis. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. So they're bringing back, like, honestly, the entire main cast for the final season. What roles are going to play, how much we're going to see them, I don't know. That'll be interesting. Um, but at the same time, it was kind of like the sequel that no one asked for. Like, I could definitely do with Star Trek in my life, you know what I mean? But I don't know that this scratches the same itch, because Orville is the one that I was thinking of with Seth MacFarlane, is much more of the, hey, we go in space and we have fun. It's much more comedic overall. In the more recent seasons, if you watch it, it's been pivoting towards some more serious topics. But I would
Oh,
actually
that's not what I
argue,
was thinking of.
that it's more in keeping with the spirit of original Star Trek in terms of its like fun adventures in space kind of thing, and some of its over the top kind of antics and stuff. And it's definitely spoofing on it, but it has its moments, I think, where it actually does the genre well and isn't pure comedy. So
I don't know. I think with Picard though, I think they advertised it going into it as basically, Picard kicking ass. So I get the serious tones, and it's more about the straight adventure and him being, phenomenal kind of leader and captain as he is.
yeah, but it comes back to some of the discussion I think we've had before in terms of like, is this, and this is a discussion I think we're going to come back to again with Morbius, is like, how true is this to source material? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they might be taking the name of Star Trek and taking the character of Picard, and they're telling a story that might be better suited to somebody else. In a similar fashion to we've had the conversation specifically with Peter Parker in the MCU, is very much like borrowing like Miles Morales storylines and characteristics, but they're using it for that incarnation of Peter Parker. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much this resonated for me as original Next Generation Picard type stuff, and maybe was more like a different kind of space drama, maybe that was pulling from an established franchise name. 3 seasons is a great number overall, and I'm hoping they can bring this home for a strong landing, a strong finish for the franchise, and for not the franchise, but at least for the character.
Speaking of bringing home, though,
Oof.
I don't know if he's going to be going home anytime soon. Ezra, not Urza, as I was saying before the show.
Yeah,
Ezra,
but you've been right on the
Ezra
entire time
Miller,
we've been going.
star of the Flash in DC's cinematic universe, was in Justice League and was also in the Snyder Cut as well.
hmm
They just finished the Flash movie. They've advertised that, and DC's why is it escaping me? Their teaser fanfare. Forget the exact name for it.
Not quite sure what you're referencing.
It was like 2 months ago. They're basically their version of E3 when they just do their fan service promo. I don't know why the name is escaping me on that, but either way, Flash was advertised for that. And long story short, Miller was in Hawaii, got into some altercation in a bar, got arrested. And now Warner Brothers has basically put the kibosh on all Flash projects with Miller.
Yeah.
Routinely wouldn't be too big news, but with everything in the pipeline, with having advertised the Flash and the Flashpoint paradox, it's very clear that they're benching on his Flash and his character to be a big part of their kind of relaunching of things. So them say they put a hold on things Well, that's a huge question mark now. Where do things stand? And you already have the debacle with, the Snyder cut and the separation of fans in general.
Yeah, I mean, we did a whole episode on the Snyder Cut for those who don't know, so do feel free to go back and look at our takes on that. Because I will be honest, I think Ezra Miller's character was one of my favorites of the entire franchise. Like, the Snyder Cut especially was darker and heavier in tone, and Ezra added a needed lighter comedic streak to it. While his character still was like a serious character, right? Like, he was joking around and stuff, but you could tell he was grappling with real issues and he was troubled, and he played an important role in how that whole thing was resolved. So like, I thought he was a very well written character. I thought he was a well acted character, and probably my favorite part of the Snyder Cut was Ezra's Flash. So I'm really disappointed to see him go. And I don't know what
we
they're
don't
gonna
know
do.
if he's going. It's just on pause.
Right, it's on pause. But you make the great point of, I don't know what the hell they're gonna do. Because the DC
you have another
universe
reshoot then if you scrap it, and then you have his Flash coming out. So then what? You're just gonna roll with a finished movie, and then just kind of be like, we're gonna recast. I will say that I do think the Snyder Cut made his Flash and his Barry Allen better, but he does just portray a Wally West better. He does better at the side comments. He has a bit that swagger and kind of that attitude. But I think, to me, the shocking news with this more than anything else, like, so you pause the projects, you have all the question marks around reestablishing the universe, getting fans back, but we've seen actors and actresses and directors do a hell of a lot worse than basically get into a bar fight. Kind of shocked by it. So it's like, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
He's not well liked.
I don't know. And maybe he's difficult to work with or something that we don't know about behind the scenes.
But I mean, there's a lot
But
of
he is
people
threatening violence, right? Like,
what's her name in Aquaman that played Mara? I mean, she took
Amber
a shit in
Heard?
Johnny Depp's bed. Yeah. And she, still involved. And it's like, that's a very polarizing thing there.
I was surprised they didn't
Depp or
do anything
Amber.
with her. Yeah.
But like, they didn't pause any of her stuff. And I'm more surprised too, because Ezra is also part of the LGBTQ community. So it's kind of like, I haven't really seen anybody come out being like, hey, what's going on there? So that's a bit more shocking too. Usually with stuff like this, there'd be a bit more kind of lobbying of like, hey, you can't do this. It's kind of quiet.
Yeah. I'm interested to see kind of what information will come out in the long run, because he's definitely made some questionable moves that hasn't always translated to career issues for every person, and it's very pick and choose, I think, in Hollywood, right? Like, you have so you have the Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn, who made some not PC tweets ages ago, apologized publicly for that, and was ready to be dropped from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and from the franchise entirely for that age-old thing. You've got Miller doing stuff actively currently. You've got Depp, who was removed from Secrets of Dumbledore from the Fantastic Beasts franchise, where Miller also performs, for the accusations leveled against him by Amber Heard.
Well. All his Warner Brothers stuff is paused. So we shouldn't just say DC. Sorry, he's paused in Fantastic Beasts as well.
Well, I'm pretty sure the Fantastic Beasts stuff, though, I mean, it's done already, right? Like, the next movie has been shot. This will be the last
chapter, yeah.
So it's coming out.
They said all of that's paused, all his involvement in Warner Brothers.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see what goes next, but I don't know. I want more information about what's going on. I feel like this is a troubled guy going through some issues. Maybe that's me being overly accepting of it, but
I don't know.
Long story short, I think for me, the bigger story here, as much as I do care about the actor and the person, and I hope he gets the help he needs, in the same way I hope Will Smith gets the help he needs for the shit he's going through.
He just needs to voice Jada, I think, at this stage.
I mean, one only hopes, right? But like, I think the bigger story for me personally is kind of what happens to the franchise is if he's no longer doing anything with Warner Brothers, Flash series, Magical Beasts, Fantastic Beasts, and obviously the DC universe stuff. Like, where does that go?
I'm laughing because like I feel like I needed a Will Smith smack animation after saying Jada's name.
Get her name out your mouth, man. You're gonna have some trouble.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, I'm sure I was gonna get canceled. Will Smith's gonna smack both our asses.
Oh boy. Well,
knock at the door and smack my face.
Maybe we should move on to talk about something else. And I think what I'd like to talk about personally is Moon Knight has released on Disney Plus and has been very well received, and particularly Oscar Isaac's performance has been very, very well received as the character. Now, I will say I think a lot of people going into this did not have many expectations. This is a character that I don't know that anyone was particularly familiar with in the MCU previously, right? Like, it doesn't have any tie-ins to other franchises or stories in the MCU. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's a comic character and he's got stories and fans, and I think you're a pretty big fan of him yourself, right?
I
Like,
would say,
Moon
yeah,
Knight
fan
is
of the
one of
show.
your bigger.
One of our mutual friends, JT, is probably the biggest Moon Knight fan that I know, and knowing him for as long as I've had, naturally, I know more about Moon Knight than the average. But
Okay,
I
so there
wouldn't
you
say he's
go.
one of my faves. I mean, I know about him, but it's kind of like we talked about last. He's definitely an obscure character, and because it deals with Egyptian fantasy and kind of how Doctor Strange was written in a lot of ways. Depending on the writers, and Deadpool is kind of like a lot of these characters, like Lobo's in that realm on DC side. Depending on
Oh, you
who
like
was the
Lobo?
writer at the time, it kind of went a whole bunch of different ways, from serious, awesome undertones, anti-hero kind of tones as well, to like crazy fantasy, off the cuff insanity. Moon Knight fights Dracula a lot too, which can go kind of pulp comic in a way, or he can also be very serious tones though as well, of him dealing with identity crises and almost being possessed too with the power scales. But it's very Tales of Suspense-esque, I guess the best way to describe it. Because Doctor Strange was the same way. Doctor Strange, all of his comics are very trippy, and sometimes they would make sense and you'd be on board. Other times it's just like, I should be on acid reading this. But at the same time, the writers wrote it on acid, so very strong case you should be reading that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually kind of funny too, because this is not Oscar Isaac's first appearance in a Marvel franchise
No,
movie.
it's
He previously
Apocalypse. Yeah.
starred as Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know if you knew that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So he's
Terrible
been.
movie though. With
I'm sorry.
Terrible movie though. They destroyed one of the best X. I mean, Bryan Singer killed all the best X-Men storylines. I could go on a whole Bryan Singer hate train.
Oh my boy,
But
let's not go there quite yet. But I mean, I'm happy to see Oscar Isaac getting more work in general, because even for like the famous somehow he survived line, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't write that line, so let's not give him hate for it. His performance, I thought, was overall good in the Star Wars franchise. I think he's good in this, and I think he's done some really good work overall, and I think he deserves more parts, frankly. He's a compelling person. I saw him in Dune as well. Liked his performance in that. You know what I mean? So it
yeah,
sounds like this might be a case of the actor is what's really bringing home the character for a lot of people. What do you think?
I mean, one Oscar Isaac is a phenomenal actor. He has a hell of a range. I think you needed someone with his range to play Moon Knight because of all the dynamics going into it, the power scheme, kind of the inner turmoil too of almost being possessed, not really sure what's going on, but then also inheriting this power and making it your own. A lot of ways then too, though. I mean, Moon Knight's kind of Egyptian Batman in some ways. They kind of downplay it, but I think Oscar Isaac though too is one of those actors too that does bring his own sex appeal. So you're also going to be following that just is attracted to him and is going to watch. I mean, that's a legitimate thing in casting in Hollywood.
No,
I mean,
you're
it is what
right.
it
I
is. I mean,
shouldn't
like
laugh.
he's a good looking guy. I ain't gonna hate.
Fair
You know
enough.
what I mean?
Fair
Like,
enough.
and with SNL sketch, he's ethnically ambiguous too. So you can play a wide range of Cubano to Egyptian, right?
Yeah, I think he's
But no,
a Latino by birth. Like, I think he has a Central American heritage.
yeah. But no, I think his acting prowess alone, I think he needed that. And I think what we're seeing is, again, kind of what we talked about last week. It's an obscure character. So I've seen some bomb reviews on it and people bashing it. But I think it's, again, too, people just don't know the character that well. And to
Yeah.
your point, some of these shows, we have to wait week by week then, which, discussion for another day, maybe, it might pull you out. And nobody really knows the background. No one's connected to the MCU. So it's a big question mark of who's really going to stay in tune with the show.
Yeah.
With WandaVision, there's still connection there. Even with Hawkeye, still connection there. They introduce some new characters with this. It's coming right out of the blue. And this is what we've talked about before. How committed are just MCU fans?
Yeah. Well, because I think part of the question too is, where does Moon Knight fit into the larger story? Now, I have to. This is on my next to binge list, basically. But like the other ones you mentioned, like I think most Marvel fans have a sense of like Young Avengers, and they can see Black Widow and Hawkeye and stuff like are laying the foundation for Young Avengers. If that becomes a show, if that becomes a movie or whatever, I don't know what incarnation that takes, but we can very easily see how these things might play a part of the larger whole. You know what I mean? Where Moon Knight, I don't know. Like I'm not aware of any particular affiliations he has with existing characters in the MCU that I understand, like maybe where he might come into somebody's storyline or whatever. If this is
He's
just going
always
to be
pretty
its
rogue.
own, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. And so like, if is this going to be its own side thing, which I don't hate,
Usually in New
honestly.
York as well, but like, he might team up with the Defenders or Daredevil once in a while, but it was still very much on his terms. He wouldn't just be like, "Oh, you need my help? Cool." He'd be like, "Yeah, no, I'll think about it." Kind of like how Doctor Strange is.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, maybe.
yeah. So well, it's interesting you mentioned Doctor Strange. But yeah, speaking of sort of like the way these things fit into the larger cinematic universe and stuff, Morbius has come out. We talked about this last week. The critics hated it. And I haven't even seen the movie, and I already have a very visceral hate for it because the director came out and claims that Morbius's vampire power is on Doctor Strange's level of power. And this for me is like a grating thing to hear because I've had in-depth conversations with my fiance in terms of like how we class superheroes unofficially, right? By power levels and stuff. And I talk about basically like for me, I kind of do it based on the area that they can affect. You have heroes that are local heroes. They can do neighborhoods. That's a lot of defenders. You have city heroes that can do that. You have people who can do like countries. You can have the whole world. And then you have like space heroes that we're talking about giant sectors. Like it expands the area that they're able to effectively defend and cover. Doctor Strange is an insanely powerful person. Insanely powerful. Like he easily can deal with world level threats. Yeah. Morbius does not. Like Morbius is not that strong. I don't know where the director got this idea. Like Daniel Espinosa is the director. I don't know where he got this idea, but I wonder how much of the hate for the movie stems from the director's own lack of understanding of the source material. I don't know.
I mean, I read the article you sent, and he does try to reference a comic to where Nightmare took over Morbius's body when he was fighting Doctor Strange. So Nightmare is another kind of cosmic, eternal, Midnight Suns, Nether Realm, going to the Doctor Strange in between realms kind of bit.
Yeah, but he
basically
only
a demon, but usually with those characters and they possess somebody, it's the demon basically just willing to like rip somebody's body apart through their own powers to be a means to an end.
right.
So it's like, is that really Morbius able to do that, or is that Nightmare just using a
Exactly.
conduit?
Thank you. Yeah, because I don't think you can give. First of all, I don't think you can give credit to Morbius for that because like it's kind of there's the forever superhero debate of like how strong things are because power varies widely from one storyline to another in comics, and then the use of either gadgets or magic or things to enhance it. So it kind of goes on and on. But like truly, I think the only reason this storyline even exists is because Morbius got the drop on Strange and got him in a chokehold, so he couldn't say any spells. Like that's really, I think, where he got the upper hand on Strange, which is just like every hero has their weakness. You know what I mean? Like even Superman has his kryptonite kind of deal. You prevent Strange from speaking that he can't cast his spells, then yeah, he's going to be a significantly bit weaker. And I understand Morbius being able to go toe to toe with him, but he got lucky with surprise. You can't tell me Morbius is a character that can regularly go toe to toe with someone like Doctor Strange. Come on.
I mean, Morbius is stronger than I think people realize, especially the healing factor and whatnot as well. But
I mean, he's a meat sack. He can take the hits for sure.
Yeah.
But like even in his fights and stuff with like Spider-Man, like that's what it is. He's not like Spider-Man's a more skilled fighter overall, but he can take all the hits and he can heal and everything else. And so he can keep coming. Like he's fucking relentless. I'll give him that as well. But it doesn't make him like super powerful, right? Like even in the scheme of things, Wolverine isn't a super powerful character. He's just relentless and basically unstoppable because he's effectively unkillable. So overall,
Adamantium puts him over the top for sure.
Yeah, and the Adamantium wasn't even him, right? That was an aftermarket upgrade, so to speak.
Yeah. No, it definitely made me second guess kind of the director on this because it's like, how much is this going to be a fanfare movie? Is this just basically fan fiction from the director? I don't know. It definitely was suspect on that, and both, like I said, Morbius and Doctor Strange are both characters too, where the comics would go off the rails and be a bit more fantasy-esque though too. So you have kind of those one-off battles to where it's like, yeah, but is that really that's you can't really throw that into canon like that's part of his powers. That didn't again too. Nightmare is possessing him, so it's more Nightmare than it is Morbius.
Yeah, and I think
kind of what he left out there. Switching up a bit because I think I announced Morbius as the closing, but we're going to talk about my girl Laura Croft real quick. New Tomb Raider game is coming. The last one was Shadow of Tomb Raider in 2018. Chris Dynamics announced basically they're going to use the Unreal 5 engine, which is pretty big news. We talked about that with the Witcher, I think 2 episodes ago.
Yep.
So I think seeing a Tomb Raider game on that engine is going to be phenomenal in itself. They kind of tease this to be more cinematic. So depending on the engine and kind of just regular gameplay with Tomb Raider, if you've played the relaunch of the series, very much like Uncharted, to where I forget the exact term they use for it with the action sequences, to where you're playing the game, but you're basically running as things are falling, jumping. And then, of course, you have, button timing. There's a specific name for it. Why is it escaping me? But
I know what
that
you're
was all
talking about
introduced
too.
as they relaunched it. So I'd imagine they're going to do that more in this one now that they have the graphics in the engine to really push those limits and
It's
probably
like
extend
quick
those scenes rather
scenes, or
than
what are
two,
they?
three, 3 minutes to maybe in 5, 10, who knows? But how I feel about Lara Croft. I'm super excited, and I think it's like, yeah, why not? It's time for it. Like, Shadow Tomb Raider was good, left on a good note. I'm excited for the next chapter.
Yeah, Shadow Rise, like that trilogy. I think just began with Tomb Raider, then it was Rise, and then Shadow. Were all solid games. You know what I mean? Like they were very well done. I actually use them as one of my intro games for non-gamers because I think they do a good job of sort of introducing platforming mechanics and stuff, and I don't think it's overly high stakes. They definitely focus more on the exploration and stuff like that. There is combat, you know what I mean? But like a lot of the games you can get through by sneaking and going through and just exploring the ruins and stuff like that. So I think it's one of the games on my list of like, hey, I'm getting into gaming. I don't know what to do. This is one of the games that I think I would introduce pretty early on in terms of this will get you in terms of camera control, environment awareness, climbing around and seeing like what you can do. It definitely does all of that stuff very, very well. You know, and I think
Yeah,
Tomb
I
Raider.
think.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think with the trilogy too, each one really added an extra layer, an extra depth to the
Hmm.
gameplay.
Oh
Like
yeah,
each one very similar, but also I think structurally different. I mean, especially Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the sneaking component and stealth component they added and the camouflage took it up a whole nother notch.
yeah. I think, and again, it's been well like that trilogy and specifically was very well managed. So I'm hoping we're gonna get more in that vein of things. I don't want a complete knockoff, but
Yeah.
I'm positive on what they've done, so I'm positive on what they may continue to do. And I'll be honest, I think we need to see a version of Tomb Raider on pretty much every engine as it comes out. Because the whole Tomb Raider, the fame started with, you know what I mean? Torpedo tits
Yeah.
sticking out to there, right? And
Yeah.
then like as the
Yeah.
graphics
Yeah.
get better, we start getting some curves. We get
The
some more
original Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
right?
Honestly, that was
There's
one
some
of the
more
first
geography
games
going on there, and then
I would speed play Tomb Raider, the original, before speed runs were a thing. So yeah. I'm not even kidding. Yeah, because my own buddy had it, and like he would ask me about like how do I get past this level. It'd be like 4 or 5 levels in, and I would like hop on 10, 15 minutes, bust it through, and then like tell them like how they beat like level 4, 5.
Lord Almighty! But
Memorized it that much, yeah.
look at you
So,
go,
but I only
man.
would have known, yeah. 12-year-old me, if I had a computer and a streaming app, I could have been like, boom,
Yeah, 12-year-old,
prodigy.
12-year-old. Well, you would have been 12. I would have been 10 or something at the time. I don't think the internet was into supporting streaming at the time.
I mean,
That
this is
shows
landline. My boys had come on the phone, yeah.
parents
Yeah.
yelling at me to get off the line. It's
It, it was brutal.
half the game in the
Yeah.
middle of the freaking night when no one's gonna call. There's a whole thing, but I think on that little bit of nostalgia and looking forward to the future is where we will close Spectator Mode for this week. Thanks for coming on by, and we hope to see you again next week.